From the heights of New York City, welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air, where we meet musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home in what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm Aaron Sims.
And I'm Jonathan Bell.
And this is Live and Local. It's our podcast dedicated to showcasing the musicians of Upper Manhattan. We talk with them about what they do, and best of all, listen to them perform live in one of our favorite local venues. Today, we are excited to welcome composer, arranger, and pianist, Rich Shemaria. Rich is a longtime Inwood resident and currently the jazz composer in residence within the NYU Steinhardt Jazz Studies program, where he teaches composition and arranging and directs the NYU Jazz Orchestra. Along with Dave Schroeder, he formed the band Combo Nuvo, which recorded his One World Suite, a composition he wrote as a positive statement on climate change, and the band toured it internationally. He has written music for Tony Bennett, Lady Gaga, Stevie Wonder, Tom Scott, and a host of others. From 1994 to 96, he was the director of the UMO Jazz Orchestra, the national radio big band of Finland, based in Helsinki, where he recorded 2 albums. The Prescription, the music of Lenny Pickett and Michael Brecker, live in Helsinki in 1995, both on Random Act Records. His album, 3 a.m. from Amosaya Records, features his New York City ensemble, the Rich Shemaria Big Band. And in January 2019, his Concerto for Trumpet and Orchestra was premiered by the NYU Symphony Orchestra featuring Wayne Dumaine on trumpet. In addition, Rich has composed for numerous brass quintets, including a bassoon concerto for a local bassoon great here in Inwood, Gil DeJean. We are thrilled to have him today as a guest on Live and Local. Without further ado, enjoy Rich Shemaria. That was fantastic, man.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for being here today, man. Really appreciate you being here.
It's great. Thank you for asking us and having us over.
Sure. So, how have you been?
Well, pretty good. Since when? Since the last year?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll have to say this is the first performance that I've had in over a year.
Wow.
At least with me on piano. I've had my music played by others, but this is our first live performance, and certainly with this group.
Well, we couldn't be more honored to have you, my friend. And would you mind telling the fine folks what two pieces you just played?
This was the first piece was entitled "The New World," which I wrote specifically for this podcast and performance.
World premiere, everybody! You got it for here first.
And the second piece was called "Parkland," which is dedicated to the Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, which sadly we all know was the place of the shootings several years ago. And oddly enough, I've also been. It was pointed out to me that Parkland is also the name of the hospital in Dallas that JFK was taken to when he was assassinated as well. So the piece actually is. Which I never realized when I was writing the piece. I was thinking more of the high school, and now it takes on an even more kind of poignant. It's a bittersweet piece, and it has even more poignancy, I think, with that.
Yeah.
And the New World, the first piece we played, is. When I was writing it, I actually was when I usually write and compose things, probably you do too, Jonathan. It's like I don't really think too much about a subject matter or a theme or some type of event or anything that's associated with it. Really, you just think about the music and where that's going. But in this case, as I was developing the piece, I started to think about. For some reason, I'm thinking about the discovery of North America and the New World. It just kind of, for some reason, it just came into my mind. And then I started thinking about, as I was kind of working with that, and the piece was developing, I thought about how we're all starting to emerge now from the last year of all the events that have been occurring, and how we're all sort of coming out of our shells in a way. And so we're all kind of discovering new worlds. And, it's not, things are sort of the same, but not really. Everything is now in perspective to current events. So that piece is, it's sort of has that promising kind of mood to it, I think.
A little bit of hope there at the end.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe it's appropriate to just name the other musicians.
Of course. We have Jim O'Connor on trumpet and flugelhorn, Jerry DeVore, another Inwood resident, as well as Jim, on the bass, and Rodrigo Recabarren on the drums.
So I understand you knew in advance that Jim would be part of the instrumentation. I've heard several pieces of yours, and you write very instinctively for a lot of instruments. But I don't want to start selecting what I think is more powerful than others in terms of your talents, but you do seem, I'm wondering if you think you have an affinity for settings for the trumpet, because not all melodies translate equally for different instruments. And I just feel like I just felt like your decisions, even intervallically, in terms of your melodies, they work so well, and I wondered how much of it is for the trumpet and even for Jim's specific, what he brings to the table.
Well, that's a good question. when I was younger, I played trombone, so I have an affinity for brass anyway because
Okay.
I've been a brass player myself.
Oh.
And I've written a lot of music for the brass quintets and brass ensembles and stuff. So writing for the trumpet is, I do have an affinity for that, but also for Jim, because Jim has worked with me on several other occasions and also plays in my big band. So I'm very familiar with his sound, with his tone, and the way he phrases. So when I started writing this piece specifically for this performance, it was, you can't help it. I mean, I have to hear him playing it, and I'm saying, oh, how will he play it? So some of the things I wrote were perhaps a little influenced by his tone and his phrasing specifically.
He happened to mention to me afterwards that also it's very easy, unlike most of what he gets for trumpet, it's very easy, fairly easy to play. Is that because by now you have a working understanding of trumpet playing and its limitations? And
Yeah, I mean, as a orchestrator,
right.
I've studied a lot of
Right.
Instruments, and yes, of course, you have to become familiar with it. But also, my music, which you can probably tell, is very lyrical. I don't write things that are don't have kind of a singable melody, right? So I think for any instrument, that's a lot easier to play.
Right.
You know?
Right. I also wanted to ask you, because one thing there's a lot more I need to hear that you've written, but I feel like I've gotten at least enough of a range to have an appreciation for maybe your more, for lack of a better way of putting it, maybe more classical concert styles of music orchestrally and your jazz and big band and so forth. But one thing that among many that I really love is just, it seems like groove is really foundational for you. And you have, I don't know how to put it in words, but you have I don't know if it's a California West Coast thing, but you have a very smooth groove. And I'm wondering, well, I don't know. It's not really a question. It's just an observation, and maybe you can just talk about where that comes from. And two, does it inform your harmonic vocabulary? That emphasis, perhaps, on groove.
Perhaps. I mean, I grew up in Southern California in the '60s and also the early '70s, and so the music scene back then was really rich in all kinds of things. I mean, it wasn't, when you turned on the radio, I was, I could turn on well, in the '60s, I'm going to turn on my local pop stations, and plays all the hits. And, we had all the great music, from the '60s, which, of course, were also very lyrical, so it was very rich in melodies. But at the same time, in the city I grew up in, Long Beach, California, they had a really good educational system, and so we were always privy to classical music. We had a really good orchestra and band system inside the junior high schools and the high schools, so there was I was exposed to all that, along with when I got into jazz. We had a great jazz scene in LA in the late '60s and '70s. There was all kinds of things happening. Plus, you had the early foundations of fusion jazz, and which was there was a lot of that going on in Southern California.
Right.
And so I heard all that kind of stuff. So it's difficult to kind of say, yes, I was influenced by this or that, because I was influenced by everything.
Right.
Like, you couldn't possibly, there was a huge amount of stuff out there. So,
right.
But yeah, I know what you mean. The groove is
it's
always important.
And you're and sort of sort of this effortless soloing style that floats on top of it. It's just a very kind of Rich Shemaria.
Well,
sort
I
of
mean,
thing.
when you're improvising like that, you need to have a good foundation underneath you. So when I design those improvisational sections in my pieces. They are specifically, or rather, I just don't throw out a bunch of chords onto paper and say, okay, blow over that. You have to. I tend to design the bass lines, how the drummer might feel, and stuff like that, to make it easier for to make the improviser as comfortable as they can possibly be.
Interesting. So you do actually, in a piece like New World in your chart, you actually do write out some of the bass lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, the one that we just heard, that bass line is specifically written.
Okay.
And it creates the groove. It gets it, or what's a better word? Sets the mood.
Right.
It sets the mood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rich, I'm curious, switching gears slightly and segueing into arranging for groups and arranging for bands and directing orchestras to arranging lesson plans and directing students in the right direction for their own compositions. What was that? What was that moment you became a teacher?
When did I become a teacher? Well, first of all, I'll have to say the whole teaching thing kind of caught me by surprise. It wasn't. I didn't go to college to learn how to become a teacher. I came here and I was a professional, and the teaching opportunity came up, and I fell into it. So that was in 1990, I think, or 89 or 90, I believe, when I started teaching at the Mannes Conservatory, which used to be uptown on West 85th Street. And then I went to Europe. I lived in Finland, as you said, with the UMO Jazz Orchestra. And then when I came back, I started teaching at the New School, and eventually went to NYU, where I am now, which I have been. That's my longest tenure in teaching.
You had a stint at Bennington, didn't you?
I taught at Bennington College in the summers.
Okay.
For about 3 years.
Well, they're lucky to have you.
No.
And also too is that, I mean, do you, and I guess my point kind of get to is that how much do you discover about your own work when you are leading other people in theirs?
Oh, geez, all the time. It goes with teaching. I think any good teacher knows that you learn constantly. Well, first of all, as a teacher, the teacher is just not like you go in and you learn how to teach a class, and then you just teach that for the rest of your life. You're always looking for new ways to teach and to improve yourself and to get the material across. And so in that case, you're always researching about new material and different things. So I'm discovering things. I'm discovering new worlds of music. I mean, you can find out all kinds of things, like you say, "Oh, I need to talk," or maybe like a student will come up to you and you say, "Hey, what about this?" And you go, "I don't know." So you have to go research.
What do you mean? You're the teacher. You're supposed to know everything, right?
Yeah, right. Well, you have to go research and you have to find out about things. So, just things like that, oftentimes allow you to. Improve yourself, and you learn things all the time. But on an even, more personal note, I think that your teaching can also largely be a lot of improvisation in it, and it requires you to be, what's the word? You have to reflect and kind of look inwards and one of the big things that I don't know, as a teacher, I've always asked myself is that, man, am I teaching them the right stuff? Is what I'm saying actually, is this what I believe in and stuff? So I've had to deal with stuff like that. I think every good teacher does that.
I want to talk a little bit more about the Parkland. Very, to use a word I think you said poignant, great word, kind of melancholy,
bittersweet.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Again, lyrical, but the head of the melody with the trumpet. I kind of forget exactly what happens there, but there's just some beautiful, sort of non-enharmonic moments in the trumpet. I think in the second phrase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there are just some beautiful moments, and just wondering. It's a great opportunity for me. To just ask you maybe. I know it's very. It operates at a non-critical level, the creative process, but to the extent that you can you maybe share with our listeners and fellow composers maybe some more conscious level strategies?
Well, first of all, I mean, in composing, I mean, what goes on for any composer?
There's no roadmap.
Exactly. There's no roadmap. However, I think the most important thing is that, you know, in every, well, here's a great example. There was this is from something I read once in a book about composition, and they're asking this composer what his composition process is like. And the composer says, well, I sit at the piano and I begin to improvise. Mm-hmm. And once I've captured an idea, then I apply all the forces of good music to that idea.
Right.
Joseph Haydn.
Well,
so, you know, yeah.
Wasn't expecting that.
That was a few years ago that he said that. And I think the process for many composers, and certainly for myself, is still that way. You know, you can improvise, and then you get a motif, you get some chords, maybe a rhythm, you know, something like that, and then you begin to develop it. Right. And I think that was what he meant by I'm applying all the good forces of music onto it. But you're developing a theme. This is true not only of music, but in you're writing a play, you're writing a book, you're making a movie. It's the same kind of process.
To quote Nike, maybe just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. But however, I mean, beyond that, then you want to start developing. A lot of times, I mean, you either work sometimes in a vertical manner, meaning you're throwing down some chords and then you put a melody over it, or some people work the other way. You write a melody over it and you kind of put down the chords. I try and do both all at once, and making sure that the vertical and the horizontal elements are all interacting together.
I was also wondering if, you've had a decent survey of the musical and sort of jazz scene over a number of decades, and I guess I would like to get your impression for where you feel like the jazz and maybe just the new music scene is going. What seems promising to you? Maybe even some names that you maybe champion. Some.
Boy, I don't know. That's a tough
or
one.
trends. Say trends in the positive and negative.
I have to tell you, right at this moment, currently, it's difficult to comment on that because of this huge layoff, this kind of lull that we've all had for the last year and a half. But I don't know. I'm not one that's big on trends. I mean, because I spend a lot of time working with my own music, so I'm really only concerned. My major concern is just where am I going? Where's my own music?
I guess I suppose I ask because of your connection to NYU, and you are kind of tied into a youthful scene, and you kind of hear from students what they're into.
Well, I will tell you one thing. Just as far as trying to keep music going in kind of a forward motion. A piece I just recently wrote, which was performed at NYU, I wrote for the NYU Symphony for the orchestra, and it's called Symphonic Variations on a Theme by Wayne Shorter.
Right.
So this is in that piece, I incorporate not only just jazz elements, but also modern orchestral elements as well. So, and along with the orchestra, we had tenor saxophonist Chris Potter performing and improvising on the piece as well. So in that, and it's not just, like an orchestra piece, which sometimes you often hear where it's just a jazz piece that has an orchestra playing it, which is this. But I tried to make it, this is like an orchestral piece that features some jazz elements in it as well. So I think it's as far as I'm concerned, that's the way that I like to take. That's one of the things that I'd like to see that happen more.
Is sort of working across those boundaries of tradition.
Yeah, you bet. I think it's not only is it. I think it's a really. I mean, those are sometimes like the orchestral world and the jazz world are two kind of really far apart elements, and to bring them together in a way where there's no degradation of one or the
right?
And trying
Keeps
to keep them
the
both vital in a piece. I think that's a way to go.
Who are some of your influences or people who have shaped your specifically arranging and orchestration prowess?
Well, boy.
Because that's a big
It's
part.
a long list, man.
Well, because your interest in seeing that work between the orchestral world and the jazz world sort of assumes an ability on the orchestration front, which is not the case with jazz people always. But you're someone who actually has that range.
As far as like jazz writers go, composers and writers, of course, people like Gil Evans,
right,
and
of course.
George Russell, who are really the stuff that they were doing back in the in the 50s and stuff was really amazing. And then Thad Jones, who I dearly love. When I was growing up in Los Angeles, when I was in high school, I was probably didn't know it at the time, but I was very influenced by Quincy Jones and also Oliver Nelson, who were tremendous. That's like, I kind of just, that stuff was, I intuitively kind of took that into myself. A really big influence on me was Bob Brookmeyer, who I worked with in the BMI Composers Workshop when it was just getting going. It was right back at the beginning, along with Manny Album, and they were very influential on Bob on my composition, Manny on my orchestration, and and then also very influenced by classical composers and orchestrators. And
that's right.
I don't know. That list is huge. Just
not to mention that ability has landed you some interesting and fun gigs like the Tony Bennett.
I did. It was a last-minute rush job, and I mean like 3 days, and where I had to do some pieces for Lady Gaga and for Stevie Wonder, as well. And that was kind of cool. Tom Scott was the musical director, and Tom and I had been working together, and they had their first rehearsal, and she came up to him and said, "Well, I want the orchestra with that." And Tom, so I got a really fast phone
small
call
request,
and put that together.
Who do I know can put together an orchestration right now for Born This Way?
Yeah,
or whatever she's
call Rich. He's the
call
guy.
Rich.
He's the guy.
Absolutely.
So, but that was a lot of fun.
Do you have any memorable performances of your work, like that really stay with you?
Boy, memorable performances. Yes, actually, the first time, this group that you had mentioned earlier in my bio, Combo Nuvo, which was group that we have with my musical partner, Dave Schroeder, and we took the group to Costa Rica to work with the Costa Rican National Symphony there. And so to do that, of course, well, somebody had to write all the orchestrations for that performance, which was
Once again,
was me.
There's a symphony?
Yeah.
Rich?
So, and that was the first time that, and so I had written, I don't know, several pieces. I don't know, it's 8 or 10 pieces that I wrote for that concert, and they were first-rate orchestra. So that was really the first time that we had, that I got my pieces played by a really great orchestra. You know? And so we were down there, and during the rehearsals, you know, we had the Combo Nuvo was set in sort of up front of the orchestra, and the orchestra was all around us. And the piano, the horn players, the guys were in front, and then the piano was sort of behind the horn players and in front of the orchestra. So I was right in the middle of the orchestra. So sometimes and the orchestra was sounding so good, and we had several days to rehearse, which is, you know, it's a real close to a miracle.
Right.
And,
It's nice.
And sometimes I would just stop playing and listen to the orchestra and think, oh my gosh, this is just the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Wow. What a great
Yeah,
experience.
that was one of the, that was pretty cool.
When it stops you from playing your own music.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Wow.
Great experience.
So, Rich, I think you have another treat for us coming up. Can you tell us what you're going to play next?
Yeah, the next piece that we're going to play is called The Invisible Bridge, which, Aaron, I'm sure you remember, I wrote for the Inwood Artworks art show that you had, how long ago was that?
I think that was 2018.
Yeah, called The Invisible Bridge, which was about the artists in our neighborhood in Inwood.
That's right. That's right.
And so that piece, I wrote it for that, and I don't know, I tried to get the flavor of the show, as well as kind of thinking just about the flavor of our neighborhood, and that's what you're going to hear.
Yeah, just so a little context, it was a group show of about 50 local artists who all had a piece, a part of this greater show to show that we are a very multicultural, diverse community full of incredibly talented people. And then Rich just absorbed that and turned it into another multicultural, multi-diversified, being played by really talented people about really talented people.
Yeah.
So that was pretty special. Thanks again for that.
My pleasure. It's always great, which is another thing I like about Inwood Artworks, is you guys provide opportunities for us to do creative things. Whether it's the art show or this thing or playing in the park.
or almost.
Yes.
Yeah. And, well, the music festival, that was cool.
And the music festival.
Drugstores.
Was great.
Dictor Pharmacy.
Yeah, the Dictor Pharmacy. I will have to say, we just have to point out that, in case anybody's wondering about the performance in the park, we were going to play before this. I think it's one of the greatest stories I could possibly tell. You asked about one of the greatest performances. Well, this is it. We went to go play before the movie, which was
A movie about climate change.
Yeah,
it was
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, it was Before the Flood.
Before the Flood.
A documentary called Before the Flood.
Right, and we're out there with Kevin Delaney
Yep.
and Jim and Jerry and Rodrigo.
Was
Actually, this band.
It was this band.
Yeah, and we're gonna, we're getting ready to play, and Kevin goes into his things, and just as we're getting to play, the skies
They just opened up.
appropriately opened up right on us.
It was like a night that was like, I think, like 10% chance of rain, and and boy, that 10% chose the exact moment of the day to rain.
Most
then.
memorable non-performance.
memorable performance.
So we always thought it was, Rich and I do joke and shake our heads in laughter about the fact that a movie about climate change and a whole band playing with the composition about climate change gets rained out in a park surrounded by nature. I mean, you can't write that stuff. Well, one day we shall overcome, and we will have Combo Nuvo play One World Suite in Inwood. It just won't be outside. Well, maybe it will one day. You never know. Well, anyway, we're thrilled to have one more piece for you to listen to from Rich Shemaria. Enjoy. Wow, man. I loved hearing that again. Thank you so much. That was really wonderful.
Another happening rich groove.
Absolutely.
It's really nice.
And also, I want to say again, just highlighting again, and we're also thrilled that you're inspired to write a new piece, The New World, for this podcast. So thanks again for that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. A Rich Shemaria world premiere composition. Rich, before we take off here, I mean, we could hear you play all evening. Is there a place where we could send people to hear more of your music?
I have a YouTube channel with my big band, Rich Shemaria Big Band. So you can find, I think we have 10 pieces up there. There's some other things. If you type in my name, all kinds of things come up on the Google search.
Good
or
things,
whatever.
though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we all fear.
It's musical stuff.
Right. Awesome. Well, we'll get your name up there at YouTube so people can follow you there. Anyway, thank you again, Rich, for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having us. It's terrific.
It's really wonderful. Always a pleasure. And this is Live and Local. It's Inwood Artworks On Air podcast where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all kinds who make their home here in what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show some love right now by rating this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. And please share with your friends. If you like what we're doing, we are essentially trying to build a platform here. This is the only podcast for local artists in northern Manhattan to be represented, and we feel there's a lot of talented people who deserve to be heard. So please share. Thanks to Hudson View Gardens here for hosting us in their lounge, and also to hidesites.com for local uptown promotional support. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep up with all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. You can support us if you like, and all our programming by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with City Council, and in part by a grant from the NYC and Company Foundation with partial support by Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for being with us today on Inwood Artworks On Air. This is Aaron Sims.
I'm Jonathan Bell.
For Inwood Artworks On Air.